Hey guys, tonight we begin with a chilling truth. Medieval castles weren't just cold, they were see your breath inside cold. Imagine trying to sleep in a stone box built to withstand sieges, not to keep you warm. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who's braving the cold tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Picture this. The flicker of a single candle barely pushing back the darkness. Its light dancing on thick stone walls. You hear the faint whistle of wind sneaking through cracks, the echo of your own footsteps on bare rock, and the distant, stubborn crackle of a dying fire struggling to hold back the chill. This is not a cozy night. It's a nightly battle for survival. Let's get one thing straight. Medieval castles were cold. Not grab a blanket cold, but see your breath indoors cold. These were stone boxes built to survive sieges, not to comfort guests. There was no central heating, no radiators, and definitely no warm duvets with goose feathers and thermal sheets. So how did they do it? How did people in these drafty, freezing fortresses manage to sleep through the night without turning into human icicles? Tonight, we're stepping into the shadows, into the chill of the past, to find out how medieval people didn't just endure the cold. They made it through the night, barely. When you picture a medieval castle, maybe you imagine warm candlelight flickering on tapestries, banquets in great halls, and nobles lounging in fur-lined robes. But the truth, most castles were brutally uncomfortable at night, especially in winter. Behind those thick stone walls was a world colder than many winter forests. No insulation, no double glazing, just raw stone, open quarters, and wind that whistled through the cracks like a warning. Sleeping in a castle wasn't romantic. It was a nightly struggle. Surviving the cold was as important as surviving your enemies. Let's start with the basic problem. Stone. Castles were made of it for a reason. Stone is fireproof, it's durable, it's great against arrows and battering rams. But it's also a terrible insulator. Unlike wood or mud brick, stone absorbs cold like a sponge, and once cold, stays that way for hours, sometimes days. Even if you lit a fire in a room, the heat would vanish the moment the flames died. Imagine it, thick stone walls, sometimes 10 feet deep, surrounding you on all sides. A high ceiling, small windows, if any. No carpets, no insulation, just slabs of rock echoing your footsteps and radiating the chill of the earth. And the layout didn't help. Great halls were massive open spaces, bedchambers perched in towers high above the ground, where winds blew strongest. Spiral staircases acted like wind tunnels, and the only thing stopping a midnight breeze were heavy wooden doors and tapestries, if you could afford them. In short, castles were built to keep enemies out, not to keep heat in. And it wasn't just the stone. The design itself contributed to the cold. Most rooms weren't sealed shut. They were part of a network of chambers and hallways that allowed drafts to sneak in from every direction. Open courtyards let the wind into the very center of the castle. So at night, when the sun set and the fires dimmed, the cold became a silent invader, unseen, unstoppable, and absolutely everywhere. In most medieval castles, the closest thing to heating was an open hearth, a big stone fireplace if you were lucky. if not just a small fire pit in the center of the room. These fireplaces were inefficient. They filled the air with smoke and struggled to warm even the immediate space, let alone a whole room with 20-foot ceilings. Worse yet, there were no chimneys before the 12th century. Smoke just drifted upward, hoping to escape through holes in the wall or ceiling. Most of it didn't. So what did they do? They relied on bedroom fires called chamber hearths, but only the wealthy had them. Servants and lower-ranking members of the household often slept in cold, unheated side rooms, or even hallways without any fire at all. For those with means, they used braziers, metal bowls filled with hot coals. These could warm a room slightly, but they came with danger. Hot coals in a wooden room. You see the problem? Fires were common, so were burns. And then there was the smoke. More than one person in medieval history died not from freezing, but from carbon monoxide inhalation in a poorly ventilated room. Still, the brazier glowed, the fire cracked, and for a brief moment, warmth returned. Enough to take off your boots and pray for morning. Now we get to the real medieval survival weapon. The bed with curtains. These weren't just fancy royal furniture. The four-poster bed with heavy drapes existed for one reason: to keep warmth in. Imagine a tent inside a stone room, wrapped in layers of thick fabric. That's what these beds were. The curtains weren't aesthetic. They were functional. At night, you pulled them shut, sealing yourself off from the rest of the freezing room. The warmth of your body, and maybe one or two others, was trapped inside this cocoon of cloth. But it gets better. Wealthier families lined the curtains with wool or fur. Some even used felted wool blankets thick as rugs as extra insulation. The bed itself was raised, sometimes several feet off the cold floor, to avoid drafts that slithered along the stone. And the mattress, a sack filled with straw or feathers. Not exactly memory foam, but it held warmth, and most importantly, it stayed dry. Families often doubled up, 2, 3, even 4 people in one bed. Children slept with siblings, servants slept with other servants. Warmth was more important than personal space. You didn't sleep spread out. You curled up tight, knees tucked in, arms wrapped around your chest. It wasn't comfort. It was containment. And once you were in, you didn't get out until daylight. Let's be clear. Surviving a castle night wasn't something you did alone, especially not if you were nobility. Enter the servants, specifically the night servants. These men and women had one goal: make sure their master didn't freeze, and they did this in ways both clever and exhausting. First, they prepared the bedchamber hours before bedtime. A servant would light a fire, carry coals, and set up the brazier. They'd warm bedstones, flat rocks heated by fire, and tuck them into the mattress to preheat it. They'd boil water and pour it into metal bottles or ceramic jars, which were wrapped in cloth and slid under the sheets like medieval hot water bottles. Next, the blankets. Thick wool, sometimes fur, always layered. Servants would fluff the mattress, smooth the linen sheets if any, and fold extra coverings at the feet. And then they stayed in the room all night, listening, waiting, sometimes sleeping upright in a chair near the door. Why? To refill the brazier, to add logs to the fire, to bring warm water if needed, to fetch another blanket if their lord stirred. Their job didn't end when their master fell asleep. In many ways, that's when it began. Even nobles weren't immune to cold. chronic coughs, inflamed joints, winter fevers. The best remedy wasn't a doctor. It was a competent servant with a pile of warm rocks and a pot of boiled wine. Some noble women even had warming stools, wooden frames lined with iron, filled with embers. They sat on these during evening prayers or reading. Others wrapped their legs in sheepskin wraps or fur-lined boots, which never left their bedside. In short, the comfort of one person was often built on the labor of 3 or 4 others. You might think that nobles had it better when it came to sleeping warm, and in some ways they did. Larger beds, thicker blankets, personal fires. But here's the twist. Castle architecture often made their rooms colder. Noble bedchambers were located in the upper floors of towers, farther from the earth's natural warmth, more exposed to wind, and often built with large windows to show off wealth. These windows, of course, had no glass. At best, they had wooden shutters or thin oiled cloth. So while lords and ladies had help, fires lit, beds warmed, servants watching, the cold still reached them, sometimes worse than the poor sleeping below. As you curl up tight, knees tucked in and arms wrapped around your chest, remember, this wasn't comfort, it was containment. Surviving a castle night wasn't something you did alone. Servants worked tirelessly to keep the fires burning and the bed warm, often at their own expense. Now, close your eyes, let the cold fade into the background, and prepare for the next chapter of endurance, the stone box trap, why castles were freezing by design. You wake in the darkness, breath curling in the air, and realize the castle itself is your greatest adversary. Forget the stories of roaring hearths and velvet-draped chambers. Every inch of this place is a monument to cold, engineered for defense, not comfort. The walls around you are 10 feet thick, built to stop arrows and fire, but they also trap the chill of the earth and the bite of the wind. You run your hand along the stone. It's always cold, always a little damp, as if the castle itself is sweating out memories of 1,000 winters. Historians love to debate whether medieval castles were marvels of engineering or elaborate torture chambers for the living. Some claim the architecture was a necessary evil, a price paid for safety in a brutal world. Others argue that the very features that made castles impregnable, thick walls, narrow windows, high towers, also made them nearly uninhabitable for much of the year. You can't help but wonder, did the lords who built these fortresses ever regret trading warmth for security? The basic problem is stone. Stone is fireproof, durable, and unyielding, a perfect shield against siege engines and flaming arrows. But as an insulator, it's a disaster. Unlike wood or mud brick, stone absorbs cold like a sponge. Once chilled, it radiates that cold back into every room, every corridor, every bedchamber. Even if you manage to light a fire, the heat vanishes the moment the flames die. The walls themselves seem to drink the warmth from your bones. You shuffle across the floor, each step echoing in the cavernous space. There are no carpets here, no insulation, just slabs of rock underfoot, radiating the chill of the ground. The ceiling soars above you, lost in shadow, and the small shuttered windows do little to keep out the wind. If you're lucky, a heavy tapestry hangs on the wall, its fabric stiff with age, a feeble attempt to block the drafts that snake through every crack. The castle's layout doesn't help. Great halls are vast, open spaces, impossible to heat. Bedchambers perch high in the towers, exposed to the full force of the wind. Spiral staircases twist upward like stone chimneys, channeling icy air from the lower levels straight into your room. Open courtyards in the center of the castle act as wind tunnels, drawing the cold into the very heart of the fortress. At night, when the sun has set and the last embers fade, the cold becomes a silent invader, unseen, unstoppable, and absolutely everywhere. You think about the modern world, where double glazing and insulation are taken for granted. Here, the only thing between you and the elements is a wall of stone and a wooden door. There's no central heating, no radiators, and definitely no electric blankets. The closest thing to warmth is an open hearth, a big stone fireplace if you're lucky. If not, just a small fire pit in the center of the room. These fireplaces are inefficient. They fill the air with smoke, struggle to warm even the immediate space, and do nothing for a room with a 20-foot ceiling. Worse yet, there are no chimneys before the 12th century. Smoke just drifts upward, hoping to escape through holes in the wall or ceiling. Most of it doesn't. You cough, eyes watering, as the air thickens with soot. More than one person in medieval history died, not from freezing, but from carbon monoxide inhalation in a poorly ventilated room. Still, the brazier glows, the fire cracks, and for a brief moment, warmth returns. Enough to take off your boots and pray for morning. For those with means, there are braziers, metal bowls filled with hot coals. These can warm a room slightly, but they come with danger. Hot coals in a wooden room. Fires are common, so are burns. You remember the story of the kitchen boy who fell asleep too close to the coals and woke up with his hair smoldering. A cautionary tale whispered among the servants. The real medieval survival weapon is the bed with curtains. These aren't just fancy royal furniture. The four-poster bed with heavy drapes exists for one reason: to keep warmth in. Imagine a tent inside a stone room, wrapped in layers of thick fabric. That's what these beds are. The curtains aren't aesthetic, they're functional. At night, you pull them shut, sealing yourself off from the rest of the freezing room. The warmth of your body, and maybe one or two others, is trapped inside this cocoon of cloth. Wealthier families line the curtains with wool or fur. Some even use felted wool blankets thick as rugs as extra insulation. The bed itself is raised, sometimes several feet off the cold floor, to avoid drafts that slither along the stone. And the mattress, a sack filled with straw or feathers. Not exactly memory foam, but it holds warmth, and most importantly, it stays dry. You curl up tight, knees tucked in, arms wrapped around your chest. It isn't comfort, it's containment. Once you're in, you don't get out until daylight. Warmth is more important than personal space. Children sleep with siblings. Servants sleep with other servants. Sometimes even livestock join the pile, because a cow's body heat is better than none. You can't help but laugh. A dark, tired laugh. At the irony. The fancier the bed, the colder the room. In a castle, warmth is about location, not status. The kitchen boy sometimes sleeps warmer than the lord in his tower. You think about your own bed at home, the thermostat a simple twist away from comfort. Here, survival is a nightly negotiation, a series of compromises between safety and sanity. Historians still debate whether castle design was a stroke of genius or a recipe for misery. Some say the architecture saved lives during sieges. Others argue it condemned generations to sleepless, shivering nights. You suspect the truth is somewhere in between. The castle is both sanctuary and prison, a place where warmth is always just out of reach. As you pull the covers tighter and listen to the wind howling through the stone, you realize the real enemy isn't outside the walls. It's the cold within them. And tonight, like every night, you fight for a few precious hours of sleep, wrapped in layers, surrounded by stone, and dreaming of a world where comfort is more than just a memory. You pull the covers tighter, but the cold finds you anyway. Tonight, you're not the lord of the manor or the lady in the tower. Tonight, you're one of the many who keep this stone box running. A servant, a kitchen boy, a chambermaid, an invisible hand in the machinery of medieval life. And in the world of castles, your only real luxury is proximity to heat. The truth is, warmth in a castle isn't about status, it's about location. The kitchen is the heart of the castle, and not just because of the food. It's the warmest place after sunset, thanks to the constant fires, bubbling pots, and roasting spits. If you're lucky, you find a spot near the hearth, your back pressed against warm stones, the scent of bread and wood smoke in the air. If you're not, you're shivering in a drafty corridor, curled up on a straw mat, listening to the wind rattle the shutters and the mice scurry behind the walls. Historians still debate who truly had it worse, the noble freezing in a drafty tower, or the servant huddled by the kitchen fire. Some argue that servants, though poor, often slept warmer thanks to their proximity to the heat and each other. Others point out the sheer exhaustion, the lack of privacy, and the ever-present threat of being woken for chores at any hour. You suspect the truth is somewhere in between. In the medieval world, comfort is never guaranteed, and warmth is always fleeting. You glance around the kitchen. The fire is never allowed to die. Not even in the dead of night, someone is always awake, tending the embers, boiling water for the next day's bread, or roasting a haunch of meat for the Lord's breakfast. You hear the low murmur of voices, the scrape of a poker in the ashes, the hiss of fat dripping into the flames. The kitchen is alive, even as the rest of the castle sleeps. But the kitchen isn't the only refuge. Some servants sleep in the scullery, others in storerooms, tucked between sacks of flour and barrels of ale. The lucky ones have a straw mattress. The rest make do with a pile of rags. If you're a stable hand, you might curl up in the hayloft, sharing body heat with the horses, your breath mingling with theirs in the cold morning air. There's a dark joke among the staff. Sleeping with a cow beats freezing alone. It's not just a joke, it's survival. You remember the story of old Meg, the laundress, who swore by her bedfellow, a fat, placid sheep she smuggled into the laundry room every winter. The head cook laughed, but no one questioned her methods when she emerged from the cold months without so much as a sniffle. In the medieval castle, ingenuity is as important as obedience. Still, even in the kitchen, the cold is never far away. The fire's warmth fades quickly, and the stone walls drink up the heat. You wrap yourself in every scrap of cloth you can find. Old cloaks, burlap sacks, discarded table linens. You sleep in your clothes, boots and all, because you never know when you'll be roused for some urgent task. A spill in the hall, a pot boiling over, a noble's midnight whim. Privacy is a luxury for the rich. Here, You sleep shoulder to shoulder with other servants, your dreams tangled with theirs. Snores, coughs, and whispers fill the darkness. Sometimes you wake to find someone else's feet in your face, or a kitchen cat curled up on your chest. But you don't complain. Warmth is more important than comfort, and camaraderie is the only real shield against the endless winter nights. There's a strange democracy to the cold. The Lord may have velvet blankets and a roaring fire, but the wind finds him just the same. The kitchen boy might have only rags, but he sleeps closer to the embers. In the castle, everyone is equal before the chill. You think about the modern world, where a twist of the thermostat brings instant comfort, where heated floors and electric blankets are taken for granted. Here, survival is a nightly negotiation, a game of musical beds, where the prize is a patch of warmth and a few hours of dreamless sleep. You wonder how many people today could endure a single night in your place, wrapped in rags, counting the minutes until dawn. Historians argue about the psychological toll of such nights. Did the lack of privacy and constant cold breed resilience? Or did it wear people down, body and soul? Some say the shared hardship forged bonds that lasted a lifetime. Others point to the high rates of illness, the chronic coughs, the stooped backs of those who spent too many nights on cold stone. You feel the truth in your bones. Endurance is a virtue, but it comes at a cost. You remember the kitchen fireside tales, stories of servants who outwitted the cold with clever tricks, stuffing straw into sleeves and boots, sewing hidden pockets for hot stones, even sneaking into the laundry to nap on piles of warm linens. There's pride in these small victories, a sense of defiance in the face of the castle's indifference. But not every night is a triumph. Sometimes the fire burns low, and the cold seeps in. You lie awake, teeth chattering, listening to the wind howl through the cracks and the distant clatter of armor as the night guard makes his rounds. You envy the horses in the stable, the lord in his tower, even the rats in their nests. The castle is a world of haves and have-nots, but the cold is the great equalizer. You pull your cloak tighter, bury your face in your arms, and try to remember the warmth of the day. Tomorrow will bring new chores, new challenges, and the same endless struggle for comfort. But for now, you close your eyes, grateful for the fire, the company, and the knowledge that, at least tonight, you are not alone in the cold. You slip through the castle's shadowy corridors, the warmth of the kitchen already a distant memory. Tonight, your world is the ramparts, the gatehouses, the towers, anywhere the wind bites hardest, and sleep is a luxury you can't afford. You are the night guard, the watchman, the silent sentinel, perched between the castle's safety and the unknown dangers lurking beyond its walls. In the hierarchy of medieval survival, your job is simple. Stay awake, stay alive, and hope the cold doesn't claim you before the dawn. The battlements are a world apart from the smoky warmth below. Up here, the wind is relentless, howling through arrow slits and over stone parapets, slicing through every layer of wool you can muster. Your breath crystallizes in the air, and your fingers stiffen around the shaft of your spear. The stone beneath your boots is slick with frost, and every step echoes in the emptiness. There are no roaring fires here, no thick curtains, no cozy beds, just the endless night and the knowledge that you're the first and last line of defense. Historians still debate whether the castle's defenders were heroes of endurance or victims of circumstance. Some point to the discipline and training required to stand watch for hours on end, while others highlight the misery and exhaustion that came with the job. You know, the truth lies somewhere in between. There's a dark joke among the guards. If the cold doesn't kill you, the boredom will. But you know better. Falling asleep isn't just embarrassing. It's dangerous. If you nod off and an enemy slips past, everyone inside pays the price. You stamp your feet, swing your arms, and huddle close to your fellow guards, sharing what little warmth you can. Some nights, you chew cloves or strong herbs to stay awake, the bitter taste a small price for another hour of vigilance. Others clutch flasks of spiced wine or ale, not to get drunk, but to trick the body into forgetting the cold. You know it's a lie. Alcohol doesn't warm you. It just makes you care a little less. Still, when the wind howls and your teeth chatter, you'll take any comfort you can get. There are stories of guards who tried to outsmart the cold with clever tricks, wrapping hot stones in cloth and tucking them under their cloaks, or stuffing straw into their boots for extra insulation. Some castles kept fire pots near watch stations, metal bowls filled with glowing coals. But carrying one up the spiral stairs was risky, and a single misstep could mean disaster. You remember the tale of the unlucky sentry who spilled his brazier and set the guardhouse alight, earning a place in castle legend and a permanent nickname, Torchfoot. But most nights, you move constantly, patrolling the walls, stamping your feet, swinging your arms, anything to keep the blood moving. You huddle with your fellow guards like birds on a branch, sharing body heat and whispered complaints. The camaraderie is real, forged in hardship and necessity. You share jokes, stories, and sometimes even a song, your voices drifting out over the battlements and into the darkness beyond. You think about the modern world, where a night shift means fluorescent lights and coffee breaks, not frostbite and fear. Here, the only break you get is when the next guard relieves you. And even then, sleep is a fleeting, uncomfortable thing, snatched in a cold alcove or on a stone bench, wrapped in every scrap of cloth you own. You wonder how many people today could last a single night on the wall, with nothing but a torch and a prayer to keep them company. There's a hierarchy even among the guards. The most experienced take the best spots, sheltered corners, alcoves out of the wind, while the youngest and newest are left to pace the most exposed stretches. You remember your first winter on the wall, the way your fingers went numb and your thoughts turned sluggish, the desperate hope that the sun would rise before your courage failed. There's a saying among the old hands: the cold teaches faster than any sergeant. You believe it. Sometimes the cold brings more than discomfort. There are tales of guards who froze where they stood, found at dawn with eyes open and hands still gripping their weapons. Others fell from the walls, their bodies discovered only when the snow melted in spring. The castle remembers them, even if no one else does. Their stories are whispered on the wind, a warning and a challenge to those who come after. You laugh, a low, bitter sound, at the irony. The castle's greatest strength, its walls, are also its greatest weakness. They keep out enemies, but they trap the cold inside, turning every night into a test of endurance. You think about the kitchen boys sleeping near the hearth, the nobles shivering in their tower beds, and you realize, in the end, the cold is the great equalizer. It doesn't care about rank or duty. It finds everyone, eventually. Historians argue about the toll this life took on the mind and body. Did the hardship breed resilience, or did it break those who endured it? Some say the camaraderie of the wall forged bonds that lasted a lifetime, while others point to the scars, frostbitten fingers, haunted eyes, the restless sleep of those who survived too many winters. You feel the truth in your bones. Endurance is a virtue, but it comes at a cost. You listen to the sounds of the night, the wind howling, the distant clatter of armor, the low murmur of your fellow guards. Somewhere below, a dog barks, and you imagine the warmth of the kitchen, the glow of the fire, the laughter of those lucky enough to be indoors. But you are here, on the wall, watching and waiting, your breath fogging in the moonlight. You pull your cloak tighter, stamp your feet one last time, and look to the east, searching for the first hint of dawn. The night is long, but it will end, and when it does, you'll step down from the wall, exhausted but alive, ready to face another day and another night. In the cold embrace of the castle, you find yourself in the castle's silent heart, where the cold is a cunning adversary and survival is a nightly ritual. Here, ingenuity is as important as endurance. Medieval people didn't just accept the chill. They fought back with every trick, hack, and superstition they could muster. Tonight, you become the architect of warmth in a world built for war, not comfort. Let's start with the most basic weapons in this battle. Layers. You wear every garment you own, piling on woolen tunics, linen shirts, and whatever scraps you can scavenge. Your boots are stuffed with straw, your sleeves lined with rags. There's a dark joke among the servants. If you can still move, you're not wearing enough. It's not far from the truth. The more you layer, the less the cold can find its way to your bones, but the more you resemble a walking haystack. Historians love to debate the effectiveness of these medieval life hacks. Some argue that layering, sleeping in groups, and using hot stones were ingenious solutions to an impossible problem. Others point out that these tricks were just desperate measures, barely keeping death at bay. You suspect both are right. Survival is always a little bit clever and a little bit lucky. One of the most prized tools is the humble hot stone. In the kitchen, you heat flat rocks in the embers, then wrap them in cloth and tuck them into your bedding. The stone radiates warmth for an hour or two, just long enough to lull you toward sleep. But there's always a risk. You remember the tale of a chambermaid who fell asleep with a stone too close and woke to find her blanket smoldering. The servants still call her Scorched Sally, and the smell of singed wool is a warning no one forgets. If you're lucky, you have a metal brazier, a shallow bowl filled with glowing coals. It's a double-edged sword, a source of heat and a constant danger. Fires are common, and so are burns. More than one person has died not from freezing, but from smoke inhalation or carbon monoxide poisoning in a poorly ventilated room. There's a saying, better a cold nose than a last breath. You keep the brazier at a distance, watching its glow flicker on the stone walls, a small sun in a world of ice. The truly desperate, or the truly clever, turn to animals for help. You've heard stories of stable boys sleeping curled up with cows or sheep, stealing warmth from their bodies. Sleeping with a cow beats freezing alone, the old-timers say, and on the coldest nights, even the Lord's hounds are welcome under the covers. It's not elegant, but it works. Body heat is body heat, no matter where it comes from. For For the wealthy, there are more refined solutions. The four-poster bed with heavy curtains is the medieval equivalent of a survival pod. At night, you pull the drapes tight, trapping whatever warmth you and your bedfellows can generate. The bed is raised off the floor to avoid drafts, and the mattress is stuffed with straw or feathers. If you're truly fortunate, you have a servant to warm the sheets with a bedstone or a jug of hot water. Some noble women even have warming stools, wooden frames lined with iron, filled with embers, perfect for toasting feet during evening prayers. But even the best tricks have limits. The cold is relentless, seeping through stone, under doors, and around every corner. You learn to sleep curled tight, knees to chest, arms wrapped around your body. You share your bed with siblings, servants, or even strangers. Warmth is more important than privacy. There's a strange intimacy to these nights, a camaraderie born of necessity. Snores, coughs, and whispered jokes fill the darkness. If you can't feel someone's elbow in your ribs, you're not close enough. You think about the modern world, where a heated blanket or a twist of the thermostat brings instant relief. Here, survival is a nightly negotiation, a game of chance and adaptation. You wonder how many people today could endure a single night in your place, relying on hot stones, animal heat, and the kindness of those around you. Historians still debate whether these rituals of warmth built stronger communities or simply masked the misery. Some say the shared hardship forged bonds that lasted a lifetime. Others argue that the constant struggle wore people down, body and soul. You feel both truths in your bones. Endurance is a virtue, but it comes at a cost. There are other tricks too. Some people sleep with their heads covered, breathing through a small gap in the blankets to trap heat. Others stuff straw into every crack in the walls, or hang tapestries and furs to block drafts. You remember the story of a castle steward who lined his chamber with old cloaks, creating a patchwork insulation that kept out the worst of the wind. The Lord laughed, until he tried it himself. And then there's the ritual of the nightcap. Not the drink, but the actual hat. You never go to bed without one, pulling it down over your ears to keep the heat from escaping. It's a simple thing, but in the world of the castle, simplicity is survival. Sometimes the tricks fail. The fire burns low, the stones cool, and the cold seeps in. You lie awake, teeth chattering, listening to the wind howl and the distant clatter of armor as the night guard makes his rounds. You envy the kitchen boys by the hearth, the noble in his curtained bed, even the rats in their nests. The castle is a world of haves and have-nots, but the cold is the great equalizer. You pull your blanket tighter, grateful for every scrap of warmth, every clever hack, every shared body pressed close in the darkness. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new tricks, and the same endless struggle for comfort. But for now, you close your eyes, trusting in the rituals passed down through generations, and hope that, just for tonight, there'll be enough. You lie awake in the darkness, the weight of the castle pressing down on you from all sides. Tonight, you're not just fighting the cold. You're wrestling with the irony that, in this world of rigid hierarchy, warmth and comfort don't always follow the rules of rank. In the medieval castle, the warmth paradox is real. Sometimes, the lowliest kitchen boy sleeps cozier than the lord in his tower. The great irony of castle life is that luxury can be its own punishment. The higher your status, the higher your bedchamber, perched in the draftiest, most exposed corners of the fortress. The Lord's room is a showcase, built to impress guests with its size and view. But those very features make it a magnet for the wind. The stone is colder, the windows bigger, the ceilings higher. You pull the heavy curtains of your four-poster bed, but the air inside is still sharp as a knife. Even with layers of fur, wool, and silk, the chill seeps in. You hear the wind rattle the shutters and wonder if the kitchen boys, sleeping near the embers, are warmer than you. Historians debate whether medieval lords truly understood the trade-off they'd made. Some argue that the grandeur of the upper chambers was a necessary display of power, even if it meant shivering through winter nights. Others suggest that, over time, even the most status-obsessed nobles learned to envy the warmth of the servants' quarters. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in the middle. Pride and comfort rarely share the same bed. There's a dark joke among the staff. If you want to sleep warm, lose your title and grab a broom. It's funny because it's true. Down in the kitchens, the air is thick with the scent of bread and roasting meat. The fire never dies, and the heat lingers long after the last pot is scrubbed. Servants curl up on straw mats, pressed close together, wrapped in whatever rags they can find. It's not glamorous, but it's warm. You envy them, even as you try to convince yourself that velvet and silk are worth the price. You think about the modern world, where comfort is just a thermostat away. Here, the only way to get warm is to be clever or lucky. Some servants sleep above the bakery, where the ovens radiate heat through the night. Others find spots near the laundry, where steaming tubs keep the air balmy. The rest make do with body heat, sharing beds and blankets with anyone willing. There's no shame in it. Survival trumps status every time. You remember the story of the scullery maid who claimed the warmest corner in the castle, right next to the bread oven. She slept there every winter for a decade, outlasting 3 head cooks and 2 lords. When asked her secret, she'd just wink and say, "It's all about location, not ambition." Her legend lives on, a reminder that in the castle, cleverness beats pedigree. But not everyone is so fortunate. The unlucky sleep in drafty corridors, on stone floors, or in tower rooms where the wind never stops. Some try to fight back with layers of blankets, hot stones, or even livestock. But the cold always finds a way in. You hear the coughs and sneezes echo through the hall, a chorus of misery that no amount of wealth can silence. Historians still argue about the psychological toll of this nightly struggle. Did the constant discomfort breed humility, or did it harden the hearts of those who endured it? Some say the shared hardship brought people together, breaking down barriers between master and servant. Others believe it only deepened the divide, as those with power clung even tighter to their privileges, no matter how cold they became. You feel the truth in your bones. The cold is the great equalizer, but it's also the great divider. There's another joke that makes the rounds among the guards. If you're cold, just wait for the Lord to complain. Then everyone gets more firewood. It's a bitter laugh, but it masks a deeper truth. The needs of the powerful set the rhythm of the castle, but the solutions are often shared by all. When the Lord demands more heat, everyone benefits, at least for a while. You listen to the sounds of the night, the crackle of the kitchen fire, the muffled snores of servants, the distant howl of the wind in the towers. Somewhere, a noble pulls another blanket over their head, while a kitchen boy dreams beside the embers. The castle is a patchwork of warmth and cold, privilege and deprivation, comfort and endurance. There's a strange comfort in knowing that no matter your rank, you're not alone in your struggle. The cold spares no one, and the fight for warmth is a nightly ritual that binds everyone together, if only for a moment. You pull your blanket tighter, grateful for whatever heat you can find, and close your eyes, hoping that tonight, cleverness and luck will be on your side. You settle into the darkness, and the castle seems to breathe around you. Stone, wood, and bodies pressed close in a patchwork of survival. Tonight, the walls echo with more than just the wind. They carry the rituals and anxieties of generations who learn to endure the cold, not conquer it. Sleep in a medieval castle is rarely peaceful. It's a nightly negotiation between dread and exhaustion, a dance of rituals designed to keep the cold and the fear at bay. The night begins with routine. You wrap yourself in every layer you own, pull your nightcap low, and tuck your feet beneath a mound of blankets, furs, or whatever scraps you can find. But it's not just about warmth. There's a ritual to it, a way to trick your mind into believing that if you follow the right step, you might make it to morning. Some people whisper prayers, tracing the sign of the cross or muttering ancient charms against the chill. Others count their breaths, timing each exhale to the crackle of the fire or the distant howl of the wind. You listen to the sounds around you, the soft snores of servants, the restless shifting of children, the faint clatter of armor as a guard passes outside. Historians debate whether these nightly rituals were born of faith, superstition, or simple desperation. Some argue that the repetition brought comfort, a sense of control in a world ruled by uncertainty. Others see it as evidence of deep-seated anxiety, a culture so haunted by the threat of cold, illness, and death that even sleep became a battleground. You feel the truth in your bones. The line between hope and fear is as thin as the blanket you clutch to your chest. There's a dark joke among the castle's residents. If the cold doesn't get you, the snoring will. It's funny because it's true. Privacy is a luxury few can afford. You sleep shoulder to shoulder with family, servants, or even strangers. Each person a source of warmth and a potential thief of dreams. The air is thick with the sounds of survival, muffled coughs, whispered prayers, the creak of bed, and the rustle of straw. Sometimes you wake in the night, heart pounding, convinced you've heard footsteps in the corridor or the distant clang of the portcullis. Anxiety is as much a part of castle life as the cold itself. You think about the modern world, where white noise machines and blackout curtains promise perfect sleep. Here, every night is an exercise in endurance. The wind howls through the cracks in the stone, rattling shutters and setting tapestries fluttering. The fire burns low, casting long shadows on the walls. You pull the covers tighter and wonder how many people today could sleep with frost on their breath and fear in their hearts. There's comfort in routine, but there's also a kind of resignation. You know that, no matter how carefully you prepare, the cold will find you. Some nights you wake shivering, teeth chattering, blankets damp with your own breath. Other times you lie awake for hours, listening to the castle's secret symphony. The distant barking of dogs, the drip of water from a leaky roof, the soft murmur of voices in the next room. You envy the kitchen boys by the hearth, the noble in his curtained bed, even the rats in their nests. The castle is a world of haves and have-nots, but at night, everyone is equal before the cold. There's another ritual that binds the castle together, the telling of stories. As the fire burns low, someone begins to speak, a tale of ghosts in the tower, of lost loves and ancient curses, of servants who outwitted their masters or lords, who braved the cold for secret meetings. The stories are a shield against the darkness, a way to pass the hours until dawn. You listen, half asleep, letting the words wrap around you like another layer of warmth. Historians argue about the purpose of these tales. Were they warnings, entertainment, or simply a way to make sense of the hardships everyone faced? Some say the stories kept hope alive, reminding listeners that others had survived worse. Others believe they were a form of therapy, a way to process fear and loss in a world where comfort was rare and danger ever present. You suspect both are true. The stories are as much a part of the castle as the walls themselves. You laugh quietly at the irony. In a place built for war, it's the rituals of peace, prayer, storytelling, shared silence that keep you going. The cold may be relentless, but so is the human need for connection. You pull your blanket tighter, grateful for the company of others, for the sound of a familiar voice in the darkness, for the knowledge that you are not alone. There's a final, unspoken ritual, the hope for morning. As the fire dies and the castle settles into silence, you close your eyes and imagine the first rays of sunlight slipping through the cracks in the stone. You dream of warmth, of laughter, of a world where sleep is easy and fear is a distant memory. Until then, you endure. One breath, one heartbeat, one cold night at a time. You settle into the darkness, and the castle seems to breathe around you. Stone, wood, and bodies pressed close in a patchwork of survival. Tonight, the walls echo with more than just the wind. They carry the rituals and anxieties of generations who learn to endure the cold, not conquer it. Sleep in a medieval castle is rarely peaceful. It's a nightly negotiation between dread and exhaustion, a dance of rituals designed to keep the cold and the fear at bay. The night begins with routine. You wrap yourself in every layer you own, pull your nightcap low, and tuck your feet beneath a mound of blankets, furs, or whatever scraps you can find. But it's not just about warmth. There's a ritual to it, a way to trick your mind into believing that if you follow the right steps, you might make it to morning. Some people whisper prayers, tracing the sign of the cross, or muttering ancient charms against the chill. Others count their breaths, timing each exhale to the crackle of the fire or the distant howl of the wind. You listen to the sounds around you, the soft snores of servants, the restless shifting of children, the faint clatter of armor as a guard passes outside. Historians debate whether these nightly rituals were born of faith, superstition, or simple desperation. Some argue that the repetition brought comfort, a sense of control in a world ruled by uncertainty. Others see it as evidence of deep-seated anxiety, a culture so haunted by the threat of cold, illness, and death that even sleep became a battleground. You feel the truth in your bones. The line between hope and fear is as thin as the blanket you clutch to your chest. There's a dark joke among the castle's residents. If the cold doesn't get you, the snoring will. It's funny because it's true. Privacy is a luxury few can afford. You sleep shoulder to shoulder with family servants, or even strangers, each person a source of warmth and a potential thief of dreams. The air is thick with the sounds of survival, muffled coughs, whispered prayers, the creak of beds and the rustle of straw. Sometimes you wake in the night, heart pounding, convinced you've heard footsteps in the corridor or the distant clang of the portcullis. Anxiety is as much a part of castle life as the cold itself. You think about the modern world, where white noise machines and blackout curtains promise perfect sleep. Here, every night is an exercise in endurance. The wind howls through the cracks in the stone, rattling shutters and setting tapestries fluttering. The fire burns low, casting long shadows on the walls. You pull the covers tighter and wonder how many people today could sleep with frost on their breath and fear in their hearts. There's comfort in routine, but there's also a kind of resignation. You know that, no matter how carefully you prepare, the cold will find you. Some night you wake shivering, teeth chattering, blankets damp with your own breath. Other times, you lie awake for hours, listening to the castle's secret symphony, the distant barking of dogs, the drip of water from a leaky roof, the soft murmur of voices in the next room. You envy the kitchen boys by the hearth, the noble in his curtained bed, even the rats in their nests. The castle is a world of haves and have-nots, but at night, everyone is equal before the cold. There's another ritual that binds the castle together, the telling of stories. As the fire burns low, someone begins to speak, a tale of ghosts in the tower, of lost loves and ancient curses, of servants who outwitted their masters or lords who braved the cold for secret meetings. The stories are a shield against the darkness, a way to pass the hours until dawn. You listen, half asleep, letting the words wrap around you like another layer of warmth. Historians argue about the purpose of these tales. Were they warnings, entertainment, or simply a way to make sense of the hardships everyone faced? Some say the stories kept hope alive, reminding listeners that others had survived worse. Others believed they were a form of therapy, a way to process fear and loss in a world where comfort was rare and danger ever present. You suspect both are true. The stories are as much a part of the castle as the walls themselves. You laugh quietly at the irony. In a place built for war, it's the rituals of peace, prayer, storytelling, shared silence that keep you going. The cold may be relentless, but so is the human need for connection. You pull your blanket tighter, grateful for the company of others, for the sound of a familiar voice in the darkness, for the knowledge that you are not alone. There's a final, unspoken ritual, the hope for morning. As the fire dies and the castle settles into silence, you close your eyes and imagine the first rays of sunlight slipping through the cracks in the stone. You dream of warmth, of laughter, of a world where sleep is easy and fear is a distant memory. Until then, you endure. One breath, one heartbeat, one cold night at a time. You lie awake, pressed between bodies in the darkness, and realize that in a medieval castle, privacy is a luxury no one can afford. Tonight, survival means sharing. Your bed, your blankets, your breath. The great stone halls and cramped servants' quarters become communal dormitories, where warmth is measured not by status or possessions, but by how many people you can huddle close to. In this world, the cold is the great equalizer, and togetherness is the only shield you have. Historians love to debate whether communal sleeping was a sign of hardship or a clever adaptation. Some argue it was simply necessity. Stone walls and drafty corridors left little choice, and the only way to keep warm was to pool body heat. Others see it as a kind of social glue, a nightly ritual that blurred the lines between family, servant, and stranger. You know the truth is somewhere in between. There's a dark joke whispered among the staff. If you can't feel someone's elbow in your ribs, you're not close enough. It's funny, but it's also a fact of life. You shift beneath your blanket, feeling the press of another's knees against your back, the soft snore of someone at your side. Children sleep tangled together, siblings and cousins sharing a straw mattress. Servants curl up in corners, sometimes 3 or 4 to a bed, grateful for any patch of warmth. Even the Lord's children, for all their privilege, often share beds with siblings or trusted retainers. In the great hall, after a feast or during a siege, the entire household might sleep side by side on rushes or benches, the air thick with the scent of sweat, smoke, and humanity. There's a certain intimacy to these nights, a camaraderie forged in hardship. You listen to the soundscape, the low murmur of voices, the rustle of straw, the rhythmic breathing of sleepers. Somewhere, a baby whimpers and is hushed by a tired mother. A kitchen boy laughs softly at a joke, quickly shushed by the cook. The fire crackles in the hearth, but its warmth barely reaches the far corners of the room. You pull your cloak tighter, grateful for every scrap of warmth, every shared body pressed close in the darkness. But communal sleeping comes with its own set of challenges. Privacy is non-existent. Every cough, every sigh, every midnight trip to the chamber pot is public knowledge. You learn to ignore the snores and the shifting bodies, to accept the occasional elbow or cold foot in your side. There's a dark humor to it all. If the cold doesn't get you, the snoring will. It's a nightly negotiation, comfort traded for survival, solitude for warmth. You think about the modern world, where personal space is sacred, and the idea of sharing a bed with strangers is unthinkable. Here, it's not just normal, it's necessary. The cold is the great equalizer, stripping away pretensions and forcing everyone into the same nightly ritual. You wonder how many people today could endure a single night in this world, pressed shoulder to shoulder with the family, friends, and strangers alike. There are other quirks too. In some castles, livestock are brought indoors during the coldest months, their body heat adding to the collective warmth. You remember the story of Old Meg, the laundress, who smuggled a sheep into the laundry room every winter. The head cook laughed, but no one questioned her methods when she emerged from the cold months healthier than anyone else. Sleeping with a sheep beats freezing alone, she'd say, and no one argued. Sometimes the boundaries between social classes blur in the darkness. The lord and lady might have a curtained bed at one end of the great hall, but even that thin fabric can't keep out the sounds and scents of 100 sleepers. In smaller castles, the noble family might retreat to a solar or private chamber, but more often than not, even the privileged find themselves sharing space with siblings, attendants, or guests. The higher your rank, the more likely you are to have a mattress or feather bed, but you're still expected to share it, maximizing warmth and space. Knights and guards, when not on duty, might bed down in communal barracks, on benches, or wherever there's room. Pages and squires sleep wherever their masters do, sometimes on the floor, sometimes on a shared mattress. In the coldest months, even livestock might be welcomed indoors, their body heat a precious commodity. The castle becomes a patchwork of bodies and blankets, a living engine of survival. Historians still argue about the psychological effects of communal sleeping. Did it breed resentment, or did it foster resilience? Some say the shared hardship created bonds that lasted a lifetime, while others point to the stress and exhaustion of never having a moment alone. You feel both truths in your bones, the comfort of company and the longing for solitude. There's a ritual to these nights. Stories are told, prayers whispered, lullabies sung. Someone always knows a tale to distract from the cold. A ghost in the tower, a knight's lost love, a servant's clever trick. The stories are a shield against the darkness, a way to pass the hours until dawn. You listen, half asleep, letting the words wrap around you like another layer of warmth. You laugh quietly at the irony. In a place built for defense, it's the rituals of togetherness that keep you going. The cold may be relentless, but so is the human need for connection. You pull your blanket tighter, grateful for the company of others, for the sound of a familiar voice in the darkness, for the knowledge that you are not alone. As the fire burns low and the castle settles into uneasy silence, you close your eyes and hope for morning. The struggle for warmth is a nightly trial, but it's also a reminder. In the harshest places, survival is a communal act. You endure, not just because you are strong, but because you are together. And as you drift off, you wonder, how many of those who came before you found comfort in the very bodies pressed close, in the whispered stories, in the shared warmth that defied the cold stone walls. The castle's cold may never leave, but the warmth of human connection is a fire that never dies. You wake to the faint glow of embers and the low hum of voices drifting through the castle's labyrinthine halls. Tonight, you're drawn to the hidden heart of medieval innovation, the places where people, desperate for warmth, tried to outsmart the cold with every trick, tool, and invention they could muster. In a world where stone walls trap the chill and the wind is a nightly enemy, every new idea is a lifeline. Historians still debate how effective these medieval heating innovations really were. Some describe them as marvels of early engineering, the ancestors of modern central heating. Others argue they were little more than stopgaps. Clever, yes, but ultimately powerless against the relentless cold. You suspect the truth, as always, is somewhere in between. Survival in a castle was a patchwork of old habits, new tricks, and constant improvisation. Let's start with the basics. The hearth. In most castles, the Great Hall's fireplace was the only real source of heat for the entire household. The fire burned day and night, its warmth radiating outward in a slow, uneven wave. You can almost feel the heat on your face as you edge closer, but step just a few feet away and the chill returns, biting at your skin. The fire is a fickle friend, generous up close, indifferent at a distance. The kitchen hearth is much the same, but with the added bonus of bubbling pots and the scent of bread baking in the air. If you're lucky enough to visit a castle with more advanced technology, you might encounter the hypocaust, a system borrowed from the Romans, where hot air from a furnace circulates beneath the floors. In a place like Malbork Castle, the great Teutonic fortress in Poland, you'd find stone corridors warmed by hidden channels, the heat rising through vents to take the edge off the winter chill. It's not exactly cozy, but compared to sleeping on bare stone, it feels like a miracle. There's a dark joke among the staff. If you want to sleep warm, be born Polish, or at least befriend the castle engineer. Of course, most castles aren't so lucky. Instead, people rely on smaller, more personal innovations. The four-poster bed, with its heavy curtains, is a medieval marvel in its own right. At night, you pull the drapes shut, trapping warmth inside your own private cocoon. The bed is raised off the floor to avoid drafts, and the mattress is stuffed with straw or feathers. If you're truly fortunate, a servant will warm the sheets with a bedstone or a jug of hot water. Some noble women even have warming stools, wooden frames lined with iron filled with embers, perfect for toasting feet during evening prayers. Beneath the main rooms, in the kitchens and laundry, the ovens and boiling tubs radiate heat long after the work is done. Servants sleep above the bakery, where the bread ovens keep the air balmy all night. Others find a spot near the laundry, where steaming water and hot stones offer a brief respite from the cold. There's a certain hierarchy to warmth, and sometimes the lowliest servant can claim the coziest corner, if they know where to look. You think about the modern world, where a twist of the thermostat brings instant comfort. Here, every degree of warmth is earned, bargained for, or stolen. You wonder how many people today could endure a single night in your place, relying on embers, ingenuity, and the kindness of others. There's a dark side to these innovations, too. Braziers, metal bowls filled with hot coals, can warm a room, but they're also a constant danger. Fires are common, and so are our burns. More than one person has died not from freezing, but from smoke inhalation or carbon monoxide poisoning in a poorly ventilated room. There's a saying among the servants, better a cold nose than a last breath. You keep the brazier at a distance, watching its glow flicker on the stone walls. A small sun in a world of ice. Not all experiments are successful. You remember the story of the steward who tried to heat his chamber by lining the walls with old cloaks, only to discover that moths liked the warmth even more than he did. Or the kitchen boy who built a makeshift chimney from clay pots, only to fill the entire room with smoke. There's a certain pride in these failures, a sense that, even when the cold wins, you've at least put up a fight. Historians argue about whether these innovations truly changed castle life, or were just small comforts in a world of hardship. Some say the hypo cost and the four-poster bed were revolutionary, the first steps toward modern heating. Others point out that, for most people, the struggle for warmth was still a nightly ordeal. You feel both truths in your bones. Ingenuity can make the cold bearable, but it rarely makes it disappear. There's a camaraderie in these efforts, a sense that everyone, lord, servant, and guest alike, is in the same battle. You share tips and tricks, swap stories of what works and what doesn't. Someone always knows a new way to stuff straw into boots, or a better method for hanging tapestries to block the drafts. The castle becomes a laboratory of survival. Each night a new experiment, each morning a small victory. You listen to the sounds of the night, the crackle of the fire, the hiss of steam from the laundry, the low murmur of voices as people share their latest discoveries. Somewhere, a noble pulls another blanket over their head, while a kitchen boy dreams beside the embers. The castle is a patchwork of warmth and cold, innovation and tradition, comfort and endurance. You laugh quietly at the irony. in a place built for war. It's the rituals of warmth, the shared tricks, the borrowed blankets, the whispered advice that keep you going. The cold may be relentless, but so is the human need for comfort. You pull your blanket tighter, grateful for every clever hack, every shared secret, every ember that glows in the darkness. As the fire burns low and the castle settles into uneasy silence, you close your eyes and hope for morning. The struggle for warmth is a nightly trial, but it's also a reminder. In the harshest places, survival is a communal act. You endure, not just because you are strong, but because you are together. And because, night after night, someone somewhere is always trying to make things a little bit better. You lie awake, listening to the wind howl through the cracks in the castle's stone, and realize that in this world, the cold isn't just uncomfortable, it's deadly. Every winter, the castle claims its victims, not with swords or arrows, but with invisible enemies. Frostbite, pneumonia, and fevers that burn through the body and refuse to let go. Tonight, you're not just fighting for sleep, you're fighting for your life. Historians still debate how many medieval deaths were directly caused by the cold. Some argue that most castle dwellers, especially the old and the young, suffered from chronic illness made worse by the damp, the drafts, and the relentless chill. Others point to the high mortality rates in winter, when even the strongest could succumb to a cough or a fever. You know, the truth is somewhere in between. The castle's cold is a slow, insidious killer, striking when you're weakest and least prepared. The night is filled with its own soundscape of suffering. You hear the coughs and sneezes echoing through the halls, the restless shifting of those who can't find rest, the soft whimper of a child with a fever. The air is thick with the scent of damp wool, wood smoke, and something else, the unmistakable tang of illness. In a world without antibiotics or modern medicine, even a minor cold can spiral into something much worse. The castle's walls, designed to keep out enemies, trap sickness inside, turning every winter into a season of fear. There's a dark joke among the servants. If the cold doesn't get you, the fever will. It's funny, but only because it's true. You remember the winter when the castle lost a dozen souls to a mysterious illness that swept through the household. The kitchens were quieter, the corridors emptier, and the air was heavy with loss. The lord and lady retreated to their chambers, leaving the rest of the household to fend for themselves. The servants, as always, carried on, tending the sick, burying the dead, and praying for spring. The remedies are as varied as they are ineffective. A cup of boiled wine, a poultice of herbs, a hot stone pressed to the chest. These are the tools of the medieval healer. You've seen children wrapped in sheepskin, their faces flushed with fever, and old men with hands blackened by frostbite. The women of the castle are the true healers, brewing potions of willow bark and honey, whispering prayers over the sick, and passing down remedies that have been in their families for generations. But even their best efforts are no match for the cold's relentless grip. There's a saying among the guards: winter doesn't fight fair. You've seen men collapse on the battlements, their fingers stiff and blue, their breath coming in ragged gasps. The lucky ones are carried inside, wrapped in blankets and placed by the fire. The unlucky ones are found at dawn, frozen where they stood, their eyes open and their hands still clutching their weapons. The castle remembers them, even if no one else does. Their stories are whispered on the wind, a warning and a challenge to those who come after. You think about the modern world, where a cough is just a nuisance and a fever is easily treated. Here, illness is a constant companion, a shadow that follows you from room to room. You wonder how many people today could endure a single night in your place, with nothing but a blanket and a prayer to keep them safe. Historians still argue about the psychological toll of living in such conditions. Did the constant threat of illness breed resilience? Or did it wear people down, body and soul? Some say the shared hardship brought people together, forging bonds that lasted a lifetime. Others believe it only deepened the divide, as those with power retreated to their chambers and left the rest to fend for themselves. You feel both truths in your bones, the comfort of community and the loneliness of suffering alone. There's a ritual to these nights too. The sick are tended, the dying comforted, the dead remembered. You listen to the soundscape, the crackle of the fire, the murmur of voices, the distant howl of the wind. Somewhere, a mother sings a lullaby to her feverish child. A servant tucks a hot stone into the blankets of an old man. The castle's ghosts are always present, their stories woven into the fabric of every night. You pull your blanket tighter, grateful for every scrap of warmth, every shared body, every whispered prayer. The struggle for survival is a nightly trial, but it's also a reminder. In the harshest places, endurance is a communal act. You endure, not just because you are strong, but because you are together. And as you drift off, you wonder, how many of those who came before you found comfort in the very bodies pressed close, in the whispered stories, in the shared warmth that defied the cold stone walls. The castle's cold may never leave, but the warmth of human connection is a fire that never dies. You wake in the gray before dawn, shivering, and realize that not everyone in the castle even has a straw pallet to call their own. Tonight, you're among the unlucky, the outcasts, the overflow, the ones who sleep wherever there's space, warmth, or a little luck. In a fortress built for war, there's never enough room for everyone, and the cold always finds those on the margins first. Historians still debate how many castle dwellers spent their nights in true beds versus those who made do with corners, corridors, or even open courtyards. Some argue that the Great Hall with its rush-strewn floor was a nightly dormitory for servants, guests, and anyone else who didn't merit a private chamber. Others point out that during feasts or sieges, even the Lord's family might be forced to give up their beds and sleep wherever there was space. You know, the truth is somewhere in between. In the medieval world, comfort is always rationed, and the unlucky are left to fend for themselves. There's a dark joke among the staff. If you can see the stars, you're not a guest. You're an afterthought. It's funny because it's true. On crowded nights, you might find yourself curled up beneath a table in the great hall, wedged between barrels in the cellar, or huddled in a drafty stairwell. Some sleep sitting up, backs against the wall, arms wrapped around their knees, hoping for a few hours of rest before the castle wakes again. Others take their chances outside, pressed against the lee of a stable or nestled among the livestock, trading dignity for a little warmth. You listen to the soundscape of exile, the distant clatter of armor as the night guard passes, the soft snore of a kitchen boy behind a barrel, the restless shifting of bodies squeezed into every corner. Somewhere, a dog barks, and you envy its thick fur and easy sleep. The wind slips through the cracks, finding every exposed patch of skin, and you pull your cloak tighter, grateful for even the smallest shield against the cold. Sometimes, the outcasts are newcomers, apprentices, itinerant workers, or guests who arrive too late to claim a bed. Other times, it's those who've fallen out of favor. A servant caught napping on duty, a guard who missed his watch, a kitchen maid who burned the bread. Punishment can be subtle. A night in the cold, a day without a blanket, a silent reminder that in the castle, comfort is always conditional. You think about the modern world, where even the most basic shelter offers privacy, warmth, and a sense of belonging. Here, survival is a nightly negotiation, and the line between insider and outsider is always shifting. You wonder how many people today could endure a single night on the margins, with nothing but a cloak and a patch of stone to call their own. There's a certain camaraderie among the outcasts. You share stories, scraps of food, and the occasional stolen blanket. Someone always knows a trick for finding the warmest corner or slipping into the kitchen after hours. There's pride in these small victories, a sense that even when the castle forgets you, you haven't forgotten how to survive. The unlucky become resourceful, the overlooked become invisible, and the cold becomes just another challenge to outwit. Historians argue about the long-term effects of this nightly exile. Did it breed resilience, or did it harden hearts? Some say the shared hardship created bonds that lasted a lifetime, while others point to the bitterness and rivalry that can fester in the shadows. You feel both truths in your bones, the comfort of shared struggle, and the loneliness of being left behind. There's a ritual to these nights, too. The outcasts gather in their chosen corners, trading jokes and stories, keeping watch for the first sign of dawn. Someone always has a tale about a night spent in the stables, a lucky escape from a rainstorm, or the time they found a forgotten sheepskin in the laundry. The stories are a shield against the darkness, a way to turn exile into adventure, if only for a little while. You laugh quietly at the irony. In a place built to keep people safe, it's the ones on the edges who learn the most about survival. The cold may be relentless, but so is the human spirit. You pull your cloak tighter, grateful for every scrap of warmth, every clever trick, every moment of connection in the darkness. As the first light creeps through the cracks in the stone, you close your eyes and hope for morning. The struggle for comfort is a nightly trial, but it's also a reminder. In the harshest places, endurance is a communal act. You endure, not just because you are strong, but because you are together, and because, night after night, someone somewhere is always finding a way to survive. Even on the coldest edge of the castle, you owe to the echo of footsteps and the low rumble of voices reverberating through the castle's largest chamber, the Great Hall. Tonight, the grandest space in the fortress transforms into something far less regal, a sprawling medieval dormitory. In this world, the boundaries between public and private, luxury and necessity, blur beneath the flickering light of dying embers. Historians debate whether the Great Hall was a symbol of communal strength or last resort for the desperate. Some argue it was the heart of castle life, where people gathered not just for feasts and ceremonies, but for warmth and safety in numbers. Others see it as a sign of overcrowding, a nightly surrender to the realities of stone walls and limited space. You sense the truth is both. The The Great Hall is a monument to endurance, but also to improvisation. Tonight, you find yourself among dozens, sometimes hundreds, of bodies sprawled across rushes, benches, and whatever floor space remains. The Lord's dais, once reserved for power and display, now hosts a tangle of blankets and snores. Pages, squires, servants, and even honored guests jostle for the warmest spots. Each person's sleep a negotiation between rank and proximity to the hearth. There's a dark joke whispered as you settle in. If you want a good night's sleep, get there before the dogs claim the fire. The soundscape is a living tapestry. The crackle of log, the shuffle of feet, the soft murmur of bedtime stories, the occasional bark of a dog or bleat of a sheep brought in for warmth. Somewhere, a child cries out in a dream, and a mother soothes them with a lullaby. The air is thick with the scent of sweat, wood smoke, spilled ale, and the faint tang of straw. You pull your cloak tighter, grateful for every extra layer, every body pressed close. Privacy is a memory. You sleep shoulder to shoulder with strangers, your dreams interrupted by the snores of a night, the restless shifting of a kitchen boy, or the cold nose of a hound seeking a warm patch. There's a peculiar intimacy to it all, an unspoken agreement that, for tonight, everyone is equal beneath the banners and beams. The Great Hall is not just a dormitory for the poor or the lowly. During festivals, sieges, or harsh winters, even nobles and honored guests may be forced to abandon their private chambers and join the throng. The lord and lady might retreat behind a curtain or screen, but the boundaries are porous. You hear the whispered complaints of a squire denied his usual bed, the laughter of maids swapping stories, and the resigned sigh of a nobleman who finds himself sharing space with the castle's youngest page. There's a tidbit that always gets a laugh. The lord's bed might be a few feet from a snoring squire. It's a reminder that, in the Great Hall, status offers little protection from the realities of medieval life. The cold, the noise, the press of bodies, all are shared equally, if not always willingly. You think about the modern world, where even the cheapest hostel offers a curtain, a bunk, a sliver of privacy. Here, sleep is communal, and comfort is a collective endeavor. You wonder how many people today could endure a night on the rushes, lulled to sleep by the symphony of 100 strangers breathing, dreaming, and sometimes arguing in the dark. Historians still argue about the psychological effects of such communal living. Did it breed solidarity, or did it fuel rivalry and resentment? Some say the nightly gathering in the Great Hall forged bonds that lasted a lifetime. Others point to the tensions that simmered beneath the surface, the disputes over space, the whispered complaints about snoring or stolen blankets. You feel both truths in your bones, the comfort of company and the longing for solitude. There's a ritual to these nights. Before sleep, someone always tells a story of a battle won, a ghost sighted in the tower, or a clever servant who outwitted the cold. The tales are a shield against the darkness, a way to transform discomfort into adventure. You listen, half awake, letting the words wrap around you like another layer of warmth. There's a dark humor that persists. If you survive the night in the Great Hall, you can survive anywhere. It's a badge of honor, a shared joke among those who know the challenges of sleeping in a sea of strangers. The cold may be relentless, but so is the human capacity for adaptation. You pull your blanket tighter, grateful for every scrap of warmth, every shared laugh, every whispered secret. The struggle for comfort is a nightly trial, but it's also a reminder. In the harshest places, endurance is a communal act. You endure, not just because you are strong, but because you are together, and because, night after night, the Great Hall welcomes all who need a place to rest. As the fire burns low and the first light creeps through the high windows, you close your eyes and hope for morning. The castle's heart may be cold, but its people are resilient. And in the Great Hall, for one more night, you are part of something larger than yourself, a living tapestry of survival. You find yourself in the castle's dim corridors, watching as the old and the young, the weary and the wise, pass down the secrets of survival. One ritual, one whispered trick, one night at a time. In this world, endurance isn't just about strength. It's about knowledge, tradition, and the quiet resilience handed from generation to generation. Tonight, you become part of that living chain, learning the small acts that make the difference between shivering through the night and waking with hope for morning. Historians still debate just how much of medieval survival was science and how much was superstition. Some argue that every ritual, every way of layering clothes, every method of stuffing straw into cracks, every prayer before bed, was a carefully honed response to centuries of hardship. Others point out that many of these tricks were rooted in folklore, half-remembered remedies, and the desperate hope that anything was better than nothing. You know, the truth is somewhere in between. In the castle, wisdom is measured not just by age, but by how many winters you've survived. There's a dark joke among the servants. If your grandmother didn't teach you how to keep warm, you'd never make it to spring. It's funny, but only because it's true. You remember the first time you saw a kitchen maid tuck a hot stone into her apron, or a stable boy wrap his boots in rags before bed. These aren't just habits, they're heirlooms, passed down alongside family recipes and bedtime stories. You listen to the soundscape of tradition, the soft murmur of advice traded in the shadows, the gentle thud of a bedstone dropped into straw, the rhythmic brushing of hands smoothing out a woolen blanket. Somewhere, a mother teaches her daughter to sew an extra pocket into her nightgown for a hot stone. A grandfather shows his grandson how to hang a curtain to block the draft from the door. The castle is alive with these rituals, each one a thread in the tapestry of survival. Not all tricks are practical. Some are pure folklore. A sprig of rosemary hung above the bed to ward off chills. A silver coin placed under the pillow to keep away bad dreams. A lullaby sung in a language older than memory. There's comfort in these acts, even if they do nothing to raise the temperature. You smile at the memory of a servant swearing that turning your socks inside out before sleep would guarantee a warm night. The science is questionable, but the hope is real. You think about the modern world, where survival means buying the latest gadget or downloading the newest app. Here, it's about remembering what worked, what didn't, what your elders whispered when the wind howled and the fire burned low. You wonder how many people today could last a single night in your place, armed only with the tricks their ancestors left behind. There's a ritual to these nights. Before bed, you check the windows for drafts, stuff straw into every crack, and hang a thick curtain across the door. You layer your clothes, wrap your feet in rags, and tuck a hot stone into the sheets. Someone always has a new idea. sleeping with a copper spoon for luck, rubbing goose fat on your chest to keep out the chill, or reciting a rhyme to banish the cold. The castle becomes a laboratory of endurance. Every night a new experiment, every morning a small victory. Historians argue about the value of these traditions. Did they really keep people warm, or just give them hope? Some say the rituals were essential, the difference between life and death in a world without central heating. Others believe they were little more than distraction, a way to pass the long hours until dawn. You feel both truths in your bones, the comfort of routine and the knowledge that sometimes hope is the warmest blanket of all. There's a tidbit that always gets a laugh. Your grandma's hot water bottle, medieval tech. It's a reminder that, in the castle, nothing is truly new, only remembered, adapted, and passed on. The tricks change, but the need remains the same. You laugh quietly at the irony. In a place built for war, it's the rituals of peace, of family, of memory, of survival that keep you going. The cold may be relentless, but so is the human drive to adapt, to teach, to endure. You pull your blanket tighter, grateful for the wisdom of those who came before, for the stories that warm you as much as any fire. As the night deepens and the castle grows quiet, you close your eyes and hope for morning. The struggle for warmth is a nightly trial, but it's also a reminder. In the harshest places, endurance isn't just about strength. It's about learning, sharing, and passing on what matters most. You endure, not just because you are strong, but because you are part of something larger, a living chain of survivors, each one lighting the way for the next. You lie in the hush before dawn, the castle's stones heavy with secrets and superstition. For all the clever tricks and practical rituals passed down through the generations, there is another layer to medieval sleep, a world of nightly fears, whispered omens, and the unseen presences that haunted every cold chamber. Tonight, you join the long line of castle dwellers who faced not just the chill, but the darkness of their own imagination. Historians still debate how much of medieval nightly fear was rooted in genuine danger, and how much sprang from the stories people told themselves. Some argue that a world without electric light, where every shadow could hide a threat, naturally bred superstition. Others point out that the castle's very architecture, its echoing halls, secret passages, and drafty towers, invited tales of ghosts, curses, and things that go bump in the night. You know, the truth is somewhere in between. The cold might numb your body, but it sharpens your mind to every creak, every sigh, every unexplained flicker of the fire. There's a dark joke among the servants. If the cold doesn't get you, the ghosts will. It's funny, but only because laughter is the only defense against the unknown. You remember the stories told in whispers after the fire burns low. A white lady drifting through the tower. A knight's armored footsteps echoing long after he's gone. A dog that howls before anyone falls ill. No one admits to believing, but everyone listens. And everyone checks the shadows before settling in for the night. You listen to the soundscape of superstition. The wind moaning through arrow slits. The tap of a branch against the window. The distant clang of metal on stone. Somewhere, a child whimpers in their sleep and is hushed with a prayer. A maid mutters a charm, tucking a sprig of rosemary under her pillow to ward off nightmares. A guard crosses himself before stepping onto the battlements just in case. The castle is alive with these small acts of protection, each one a thread in the tapestry of survival. Not all fears are supernatural. There are curses, too. Stories of lords who angered the wrong priest or broke a sacred vow, and whose nights were forever restless as a result. You remember the tale of the cook who salted the bread with her tears after being scolded, and how the lord's family all fell ill that winter. Coincidence, perhaps, but in the castle, coincidence is rarely trusted. You think about the modern world, where a nightlight or a podcast can banish most fears. Here, the darkness is total, and the imagination fills every gap. You wonder how many people today could sleep soundly in a place where every shadow might be a ghost, every draft a curse, every unexplained noise a warning from the past. Historians argue about the purpose of these fears and rituals. Were they a way to explain the unexplainable, or simply a means of control? Some say the stories kept people cautious, reminding them to lock doors, bank fires, and treat others with respect. Others believe they were a form of therapy, a way to process grief, guilt, or the ever-present threat of death. You feel both truths in your bones, the comfort of a good story, and the chill that lingers long after the fire has died. There's a tidbit that always gets a laugh. If you hear 3 knocks at midnight, don't answer, unless you want to spend the night with the ghosts in the tower. It's a reminder that, in the castle, fear is as much a part of the night as the cold itself. You laugh quietly at the irony. In a place built for war, it's the invisible battles, with fear, with memory, with the unknown, that are fought most often. The cold may be relentless, but so is the human imagination. You pull your blanket tighter, grateful for every charm, every whispered prayer, every story that makes the darkness a little less daunting. As the first light creeps through the slits in the stone, you close your eyes and hope for morning. The struggle for sleep is a nightly trial, but it's also a reminder. In the harshest places, endurance is not just about the body, but about the mind. You endure, not just because you are strong, but because you have learned to live with the shadows, and sometimes to laugh at them. The castle is silent now, its stones holding the memory of 1,000 winter nights. You lie beneath your blanket, the last embers fading, and let your breath slow, feeling the weight of history settle around you. This is the final hour before dawn, the hour when the cold is sharpest, but also when hope is closest. Tonight, you are not just a witness to endurance. You are part of a long, unbroken chain of survivors who learn to find warmth in the harshest places. Historians still debate what truly defined survival in a medieval castle. Was it the cleverness of those who invented new ways to trap heat? A curtain here, a hot stone there. Was it the rituals of togetherness? The way people pressed close and swapped stories and secrets to keep the darkness at bay? Or was it simply the stubborn refusal to give in? The knowledge that every night endured was a small victory over the cold. You feel all these truths in your bones. Survival is never just one thing. It's a tapestry woven from ingenuity, habit, hope, and the comfort of others. You think of all the small rituals you've learned, the way you layer your clothes, the careful tucking of straw into cracks, the hot stone wrapped in cloth, the whispered prayer before sleep. Each habit is a thread passed down from those who came before, a quiet act of defiance against the stone and the wind. There's a dark joke that always makes the rounds. If you're not sleeping with the sheep, At least you're sleeping with tradition. It's funny, but only because it's true. In the castle, every act of comfort is a rebellion against the cold. You listen to the soundscape of the castle's last hours of night, the distant creak of timbers, the soft breathing of those around you, the wind tracing its way through arrow slits and down spiral stairs. Somewhere, a servant stirs, tossing another log on the kitchen fire. A guard stamps his feet on the battlements, watching for the first hint of dawn. The castle is never truly asleep. It is always waiting, always enduring. You think about the modern world, where warmth is a given, where solitude is easy to find, and where the night is rarely a threat. Here, every comfort is earned, every moment of peace a testament to the endurance of those who came before. You wonder how many people today could last a single night in your place. No thermostat, no electric light, just the company of others, and the hope that morning will come. There's another joke among the old hands. If you can sleep through the night in this place, you can sleep anywhere. It's a badge of honor, a shared wink between those who know the difference between comfort and survival. The castle's cold is more than a physical challenge. It's a teacher, a test, and sometimes a companion. You recall the stories told on the coldest nights, of ghosts in the tower, of lords who lost their way in the snow, of servants who outwitted both the cold and their masters. These tales are more than entertainment. They are a way to make sense of hardship, to find meaning in endurance, to pass the time until the first light seeps through the cracks in the stone. Historians argue about whether these stories were a balm or a burden, whether they kept fear alive or soothed it away. Some say they were a form of therapy, a way to share grief and hope alike. Others believe they were simply a distraction, a way to fill the long hours when sleep wouldn't come. You suspect both are true. The stories linger long after the fire has died, echoing in the silence before dawn. You pull your blanket tighter, feeling the warmth of bodies pressed close, the comfort of shared breath, the quiet strength that comes from knowing you are not alone. The struggle for warmth is a nightly trial, but it is also a reminder. Endurance is not just about strength, but about connection. You endure, not just because you are strong, but because you are part of something larger, a living chain of survivors, each one lighting the way for the next. As the first light creeps through the high windows, you let yourself drift. The castle's stones hold the memory of every hardship, every laugh, every whispered secret. The cold will come again, but so will the rituals, the stories, the hope that morning always brings. You are safe now, wrapped in layers of history and humanity, and the world outside cannot touch you here. Let your breathing slow, your thoughts grow softer. The ghosts of the past can only whisper. They cannot reach you in this quiet place. You have learned from their endurance, and tonight you rest not just as a survivor, but as the heir to their hope. The castle fades into the gentle hush of dawn, and you are home. Now let the images grow dim, the sounds more distant, until all that remains is the gentle rhythm of your breath and the promise of a new day. You are here, you are safe, and you are finally at peace.